ignore what happened in the
No.
past. It's a new church. We're going ahead, we're moving ahead, move with us.
No, in fact, what we've done is we've done certain programs, certain ways of acting. The responsible ministry program, we've tried to create a new atmosphere. We're trying to help people to change attitudes so that we can all be a part of a whole church that is really careful about the area of sexual abuse and are watchful of it. And so I think we're moving in those directions.
How was it
Can we
affected
go
your
back here
membership
first? I'm
numbers?
sorry, right behind you there first.
Russ White from Global Television. I think a lot of you were talking about the healing people. I think a lot of people are going to be watching the church very closely to see what they're going to do with the bishop. And my question is simply, what will happen to the bishop? He's still a priest for now. What happens later?
The response of the church will be, there are a number of ways of dealing with a situation like this. There may be an ecclesiastical trial. The church may deal with this in terms of administrative processes. But the Vatican, the Holy See, through the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, is the group that has the authority to deal with a bishop in this situation. So they will initiate the appropriate response.
Helen Sundell with CTV. How has this affected numbers in the church?
Well, over the last year or so, we've noticed that some places, some parishes register a decline in attendance, whereas other parishes are much the same. And so I'm not sure how we can judge if this is the cause, if all kinds of other issues might be the cause. And so it's hard to isolate what is the response of people to this particular event.
Can you go here, please?
Hi, Melanie Cotton, Canadian Press. I'm just wondering whether you've reviewed the settlement that Bishop Raymond helped negotiate, and whether you're still okay with it, and also whether you think his personal behavior may have motivated how quickly he wanted to get that settlement.
Certainly, in the last year, we've been reviewing the whole settlement, not in the sense of saying we need to revisit it, but in the sense of how to implement it. There has been no sense of saying that this was a deceptive settlement or anything like that. There's a sense of saying that this is a good settlement, this is helpful to those who've been abused, and will be helpful in their healing process. So we've spent a lot of time during the year moving forward, and hopefully by next year it should be finished.
Can we go over here, please?
Instances of sexual abuse.
Sorry, can you just
Yes. My name is Aaron Bezel with the Chronicle Herald. Instances of sexual abuse, no doubt they happen in many groups in our society, but over recent years they've been more predominant, more public anyway, with regard to the Catholic Church. What are the root causes of this, and is anything being done to address the root causes?
Certainly, as you say in your preamble, that this is an issue in all society, but in terms of the church takes does a lot of work in trying to screen candidates in terms of ministry. And so there's been a lot of work in the last number of years, quite a number of years now, in terms of trying to assure that these kinds of things won't happen again. There have been protocols in various dioceses that have happened. There have been various other programs that are helpful to bring about some kind of healing for people. So,
is what you've been hearing from congregations, and perhaps maybe what the priests are telling you in regards to this case affecting Bishop Lahey?
Bishop Lahey case?
Yes.
Certainly, as I've gone around in the last year, many people are very upset by the charges, and are devastated by the experience of a bishop being charged. And so that's been a difficult time for people. People have also had responses to the sexual abuse of clergy, and so I've heard from various priests that this is a difficult time in a parish of trying to assist people to come to terms with this in terms of our leadership. And so it's a time that we need to continue to move through to address this as much as possible, and then try to allow us to be a church that is really what we're called to be, a church of the gospel.
You go to Brian.
Brian Missouri with the Casket here in Antigonish. You talked briefly there about the canonical process that might occur in subsequent months or in time. What are the possible canonical punishments that might happen to Bishop Dunn?
Okay. In terms of the response of the Vatican, there are two ways of dealing with it. One could be an ecclesiastical trial, and the other is an administrative process. Ecclesiastical trial, what happens is there's a process that you bring a charge or bring a crime that is decided in the church. That is a whole list of crimes that are there. You bring that toward a trial, and then you have a trial. We have witnesses and judges and advocates, and the whole process. And some of the penalties that are associated with either trial or administrative process could be the dismissal from the clerical state, could be a time of prayer and penance, could be a time when they're not allowed to use the term father or be addressed as a cleric, or to wear clerical clothes or be presented as a cleric. And so there are a whole variety of responses and penalties that are associated either with ecclesiastical trial or administrative process.
It can be put out or dismissed from the church.
Yes, dismissed from the clerical state.
From the clerical
Yes,
state,
so
yes.
in other words, no longer to act as a minister or certainly as a bishop.
Given the damage that you've seen that his actions have done to this parish, what is your opinion of what should happen? Do you think he should be drummed out of the clergy?
I'm aware of lots of responses that people have. In terms of all the facts known, I don't have enough information about that to say this is the way to go, and it's also not my authority. I don't have an authority to say.
No, not your authority. What's your opinion? You've had to deal with this follow-up for the last year. What's your opinion?
It's been very difficult, and the fact that now that he's pled guilty and is going to serve some time, it certainly is an appropriate response for him to do.
Sexual abuse scandal within the church has sort of lifted the lid off issues that Catholics have been grappling with for years, and I'm wondering, in your process of calling people back to the church and getting them to sort of come home, for lack of a better word, are you going to be addressing things such as women being ordained as priests and other issues that Catholics have certainly raised around the world that they want changed?
Certainly, in response to the whole issue, lots of questions have arisen, including structural questions, issues of even doctrine and teaching. Some of those issues we can deal with at a diocesan level. For instance, how can women be more involved in church? How do we emphasize that role? And certainly we can move in that direction. In terms of the ordination of women, in terms of some other questions about structure, that's not a decision that was made at a diocesan level. So all we can do is to push the issues that need to be pushed in terms of renewal of church, of involving people and helping people to participate in the consultation process that I found at both parish level and at diocesan level. So,
But do you not see it the responsibility of the diocese to start that? Because that's what you're hearing from your parishioners.
certainly we can start in the sense of assisting people to be involved and to participate, but ultimately that's not our call. Right? And so all we can do at a diocesan level is to assist people in terms of their own faith, practice of the faith, and to be involved in terms of the direction of a parish community.
Everybody going here and there and there. Please.
Greg Morrow from the Hawk in Port Hawkesbury. You mentioned that numbers are down in some parishes, although we can't specify why exactly. But with this matter, over or almost over, do you have any plans to reach out to parishioners who have left the church now that this is?
Yes. Well, certainly we are working on a number of different levels, a number of different directions. One of which is the main work that we're involved in now, or that at least that I'm involved in, has to do with the finishing off of the legal settlement, the requirements there. And so that's another year and a half that we need to do that work in terms of ensuring that we meet the requirements there. In the midst of that, then we also need to look at a number of other issues that are coming together on parish levels. So the number of people who go to a church, for instance, the number of priests that we have in the diocese, the financial support of buildings, all of those are concerns that come together in terms of some decision-making, some direction. We also need to do some work in terms of youth ministry, of reaching out to a whole group of people that are hurt or that are just away from church. And so there's the whole, what we call an evangelization thrust that we need to work on. So there are a number of different things that we need to do, and we are working in those directions.
Bishop, I think you would agree that this whole episode over the last couple of years has been another chapter in the history of the Church of the Diocese of Antigonish. I'm wondering if you could give me your impression, how you would characterize that chapter.
Well, my experience of the Diocese of Antigonish is only a year and a half, so it's a rather small view. But I believe, and as I've come to discover in the last year and a half, that there are many gifts and many very faith-filled people here in the diocese. And I've also, as I've been here, heard some of the history of the diocese, that I know there's some wonderful directions that have been initiated by this diocese in terms of the cooperative movement and otherwise. And so I can see that there's some possibilities of this diocese continually being a real leader in terms of a lot of approach in terms of Canada.
Was it a black chapter, and is it one that the Church can recover from?
Oh, I have no doubt that the Church can recover from. It's certainly been a difficult time for us and for people still. And so it's a matter of how do we help people to move through this whole difficult period and to be with them as much as we can.
Please here and then there.
You said that you don't believe there was anything, deceptive behind the settlement that Bishop Lahey helped negotiate. But surely there must be some kind of effect on the integrity of it, or the emotion behind it, knowing what he's admitted to now, and given the large role he played, and how many people looked at him and thought, finally, here's somebody doing something about this.
Sure.
What is the effect of that?
Sure. I wish I could give you a little bit of a better insight into the psychology of a person, but I can't say that. All I can say is that the legal settlement and the decision to go toward the legal settlement was supported by lots of people. And even though some people may have some questions about that, the fact is that it really helped lots of people to come forward. So by looking at the results of the legal settlement, I see in many ways it still can be considered a very good decision by the diocese. And the whole group of people will be doing that.
Have you spoken with Ron Martin since yesterday?
No, I haven't. I was thinking about that. I was thinking about Ron yesterday, but I haven't spoken with him.
That was kind of my question. I want to follow that question. If you have not, if you haven't spoken with any of the victims who came forward to Bishop Lahey during this process, are you planning to? And what will you say directly to them?
I'm certainly going to speak with Ron. Ron has been my contact with any of the victims there. So I certainly will speak with Ron just to see, to touch base with him, see how he is, to see, how we can continue to work on the process that we've been working on.
But you guys have spoken with them though since the charges came down a year ago.
Well, as I just mentioned, I've had a couple of meetings with Ron, and we've talked about a number of different issues, and talked especially about the reconciliation service.
Were you able to deal with his dual sense of betrayal, that the man that he sat across the table and opened up to in confidence turned out to be sexually exploiting children at the same time they were talking?
We talked a little bit about that and how difficult that was for Ron. I'm not sure what else we can do about that.
What would you say to people to bring them back to the church? Why should I go back to the church?
Well, first of all, that if you're a part of the church, if you have been a part of the church, then there's a sense that there's a relationship between you and I, for instance, if you're going to say yourself. Then I would like to say, first of all, that there's a missing element. There's an element there that because you are not in the church with me, then I am reduced. There's a whole sense here that we're in this together. And as soon as some people opt out or are not able to be with us for various reasons, then there's a sense of loss. And so it's a matter of saying, we're in this together. How can we help one another? How can we heal one another? How can we deal with the difficulties that we all have? And so it's not just saying, they have difficulties, all of us have difficulties. And So
What is your reaction to Bishop Lahey waiving his right to bail and asking to go immediately to jail?
well, my reaction is that if he was guilty and said he was guilty, then get to the sentence and get to the punishment. And so I applaud that. But otherwise, I don't have very much more knowledge about that.
Last question, Ken.
Bishop Dunn, Ken Sims from the Casket. In your opinion, as the bishop of the last year and a half here, Bishop Lahey recently admitted to his fault and to his crime. Would it have been easier for you and the church and the community for him if he had have admitted this day one, going in, you're charged, I admit what I did?
Certainly it would have been easier, but the legal processes we have, have set up a certain way of working, and that's what we are a part of. And so certainly it would have been a lot easier to know that right from day one when I came here that it was all over, but that's the way it works.